Welcome back. This is the last installment of this tutorial. For this one, we'll be going over how to bring the selection that we've been working on into another scene, allowing players to choose between different characters or prefabs or whatever you want them to bring into the actual game levels. Earlier, we created another scene. I named mine Level 1. If you don't have another scene to go into, create one now and open it. I'm going to create some type of platform for our selection to land on once we move it from the menu scene to the level scene. I'll just use a plane, nothing fancy. I'll just reset the transform, then adjust it a bit to get a decent view. And since we're going to be moving between scenes, we need to drag and drop the scenes we're going to be using in our build settings. Just click on File, Build Settings, and then from there, drag the scene files from wherever you save them, whatever folder you used, into the empty space there. Set the menu scene as the first index, then the level scene as the second. And these will be indexed with the first scene starting at 0. This is very important because without setting them here, we won't be able to access them with the scene manager. Back in the menu manager script, we want to bring that start button to life, but first import Unity's scene management namespace at the top, and that's going to be using Unity Engine.scene management. And now we'll be able to access those methods we need to move between scenes. So at the bottom of the script, I'm going to create another method for the start button, and that's going to be a public void start game button. And now I'm going to access the scene by use of its index, and that's why the order is very important. But you can use the name of the scene as a string as well. So we want to use scene manager.load scene and pass through 1. If you put them in order, at least you want to use 1, but make sure you do this in the order you placed it in. Now I'm going to link this up with the button, and we already covered this, so bear with me here. Hit play and press the start button. You should be loaded into the level scene that we created earlier, but without the prefab selection. I'm going to go ahead and create another script to manage the level scene, and that's where I'll be using player prefs to bring in the selected prefab into the scene. So just going to name it Level 1 Manager, and then open the level scene and attach the new script to an empty game object in the hierarchy, and open that up so we can work on it. We're going to have to recreate that array again in this script in the same order we set it up in the menu manager. You can just copy and paste or rewrite it, then drag and drop the prefabs in the same order in Unity so we can use it in the level scene. In start of the level manager, we want to instantiate again. Similar to how we did in the instantiate character method for the menu manager, pass the array for the first argument, and for the index use playerprefs.getInt and pass the string we used to save the selected character integer. If you like, you can do a check for the player pref, but I know it was set up in the menu manager, so I'm not going to bother, but I'll leave myself a note here. Let's jump back into Unity and test. This should work, but we want to make sure and check for any adjustments that may be needed. I'm going to hit play and go with a different color other than the one at index 0 and press start. So we have our prefab instantiating in the next scene. However, that's not the color I selected. Can you guess what's wrong? I know what it is, so I'm going to go ahead and fix it. And it was back in the menu manager. We were updating the integer we use, but not the player pref. This is a simple fix. Back in the menu manager, in the next and previous button methods, call playerpref.setInt for the selected character int, and assign it to the integer we've been using just like we did in the awake method. Test in Unity, and this time we'll have the correct prefab loaded in. I'm going with my red cube, then hit start and voila, it works. Keep in mind, we disabled the gravity and it's instantiating at some random place. Let's address this by setting up an instantiation point. So imagine this being where your character starts the level. So right click in the hierarchy, select game object, and I'm calling this instantiate point. Place it so the position is wherever you like it. I want mine closer to the camera and front and center. I use a prefab for reference to see how it's going to end up. And I'm happy with that right there. Back in Visual Studios, we want to use the transform of the instantiate point game object we just created and re-enable the gravity. In the level manager script in Awake, I'm going to loop through the array just like we did in the menu manager and get that rigid body component and set isKinematic to false. This is just to give you guys an example of where you would enable and disable things like a player controller for when you need it. Essentially disable. For the instantiate point, we want to reference it globally. So create a public game object and call it instantiate point. And I'm just setting it to null for now. In Awake, after the for each loop, check to see if the instantiate point is null. If it is, I'm going to set it to the game object in the hierarchy, but this time I'm not going to drag and drop it from within Unity like before, so it doesn't even need to be public for this. I'm going to assign a tag, then use that tag to initialize it in Awake. This way, if I had forgotten to drag and drop it, everything will still work fine because we're using the game object with the corresponding tag. So there's no need to drag and drop as long as the string is spelled correctly. And like I mentioned before, I'll show how to avoid errors when dealing with multiple strings in another video. In Unity, let's create the tag. Over in the inspector, click on any game object. The tag dropdown should be above, and then just click on add tag. Make sure the spelling is correct, then press save. Now make sure the instantiate point is selected for this in the hierarchy, and under the tag in the inspector, select the newly created instantiate point tag. Back in start, I'm going to finish the instantiate function call by passing through the instantiate point game object's transform.position as the second argument and assigning the instantiate point game object's transform.rotation for the third argument, so it's not going to be parented to anything. And you guessed it, once this is done, let's go back in Unity and test it. Okay, we have the correct selection and in the right position, but we're not affected by the gravity. It's okay. Let's click on the prefab to see what's going on. And we can see the prefab is not parented in this scene where it was in the menu scene, which is what I was aiming for. Just wanted to show that there's different ways to instantiate, so use the method for your needs. The rigid body use gravity is set to false, and I'm sure you know how to fix that by now. So in the for each loop in Awake, just set dot use gravity to true and we're all set. I'm just going to give it a name of player so we don't see that clone in the hierarchy. And then back in Unity, press play and it should all be working. I hope some people learned something from this one, and thanks for watching. I look forward to the next one.